Okay, open up to page 81. We are in part 1 of The Knight's Tale, line 147. When we left, Theseus had defeated Creon and he had returned the bodies of the husbands back to the wives for a proper burial. So, page 81, line 147. Searching in the pile of dead bodies in order to strip them of armor and clothes, the pillagers worked hard and carefully after the battle and defeat. It so happened that they found in the pile, thrust through with many a grievous bloody wound, 2 young knights, lying side by side, both in identical arms, which were made most richly. So remember that pile of bodies that we were talking about? The people were going through them and kind of pilfering and stealing their armor. And they found at the bottom of the pile these 2 cousins. They were both in the same armor, meaning that they came from the same family. One of the two was named Arcite, and the other knight was called Palamon. So we have Arcite and Palamon. They are going to be the 2 men who fall in love with Emily. They were neither fully alive nor fully dead, but by their coats of arms and other equipment, the heralds knew them especially well as the ones who were of the royal line of Thebes, and sons of 2 sisters. The pillagers pulled them from the heap of bodies and carried them gently to the tent of Theseus. He immediately sent them to Athens to remain in prison forever. He would not take ransom for them. When the valiant duke had thus taken action, he took his army and soon rode home, crowned with laurel as the conqueror. So Palamon and Arcite are found at the bottom of the pile of dead bodies. They are near death. They are then brought to Theseus, who has just defeated their uncle. And because they are of the royal line, they are immediately imprisoned for life. So our bad fortune is that Palamon and Arcite are found near death at the bottom of the pile of bodies, then they're imprisoned for life. Not a good day for Palamon and Arcite. So then when we just finished, Theseus was on his way home back to Athens. And there he lived in joy and honor to the end of his life. What more need be said? And in a tower, in anguish and woe, Palamon and Arcite remain forevermore. No amount of gold might pay for their release. So Palamon and Arcite, they do not die. They actually are now living their life forever in a prison in Athens. So they're not in Thebes, they're in Athens. This went on day after day and year after year, until it once happened, of a May morning, that Emily, who was lovelier to look at than the lily is upon the green stalk, and fresher than May with its spring flowers, for her complexion vied with the color of roses. I do not know which of the 2 was fairer. This Emily was up and already dressed before daybreak, as it was her wont to be. For May won't stand for slug-a-beds. The season arouses every gentle heart, and makes him start up from his sleep, and says, "Get up, pay me your due homage." All this made Emily take thought to do honor to May and to arise. So again, there's this digression by the knight. There's the description of Emily. She is beautiful. She's compared to flowers. She's compared to the month of May. She's compared to the seasons. And she is also said to have wanting to pay homage to the springtime. So that's why she gets up, or she arises. Her clothes were bright and new in appearance. Her blonde hair was twined in a braid down her back, a yard by long, my guess. In the garden at sunrise, she walked up and down according to her fancy. She gathered flowers, some white, some red, to make an artful garland for her head, and she sang in a voice as heavenly as an angel's. So the knight describes Emily in a most beautiful way. Talks about her appearance, her lovely long blonde hair, her fine clothes, and that she also picks flowers and makes a garland for her head. She is in the garden, kind of frolicking around, enjoying the beautiful May morning. And the garden is very close to the prison. The great tower, very thick and strong, which was the chief dungeon of the castle, where those knights of whom I told you, and shall tell you more, were in prison, adjoined the wall of the garden where Emily took her amusement. So there's a giant tower that kind of overlooks the garden. So if you're a prisoner, depending on where you are, you'll be able to see out into the garden. The sun was bright and the morning fair. Palamon, the woeful prisoner, as was his custom by his jailer's leave, was up and was walking to and fro in a high chamber in the tower, from which he saw all the noble city and the garden too, full of green branches, where lively and shining Emily the fair was at her walk, roaming up and down. The sorrowful prisoner, this Palamon, walked to and fro in the chamber, and complained to himself of his woe. Often he said, alas, that he was born. So happened, by chance or luck, that through a window, thick with many an iron bar as large and squared as any beam, he cast his eye on Emily. Therewith he paled and cried out, ah, as though he had been stung to the heart. At that cry, Arcite at once jumped up and said, my cousin, what ails you? You are so pale and death-like to look at. Why did you cry out? Who has done you wrong? For the love of God, resign yourself in all patience to our prison, for it may not be otherwise. Fortune has given us this adversity. Some unfavorable aspect or disposition of Saturn, through some arrangement of the heavenly bodies, had bestowed this on us. It would have been so even if we had been taken to do the opposite. The heavens stood thus when we were born. We must endure it. This is the brief, plain truth. So, Palamon happens to look out the window, happens to spy the beautiful Emily, and is struck by Cupid's bow and immediately falls in love with her. Arcite hears him cry out and says, and thinks immediately that he is crying out because his life is so miserable and that they're in prison for the rest of their life. He doesn't yet realize why Palamon has cried out. Palamon answered, in fact, cousin, in this opinion of what is wrong, you are harboring vain imaginings. It was not this prison that made me cry out, but I was hurt just now through my eyes and to my heart. The hurt will be my destruction. The beauty of the lady whom I see wandering yonder in the garden is the cause of all my cries and my woe. I do not know whether she is a woman or a goddess, but my guess is that she is in truth Venus. And with that he fell down on his knees and said, Venus, if it be your will thus to take this shape upon yourself in this garden before me, sorrowful, wretched creature, then help us to escape from this prison. And if it be that my destiny is fashioned by eternal decree to die in prison, have some compassion on our family, which is brought so low by tyranny. So Palamon tells Arcite, I'm not upset because we're in prison. I'm upset because I saw this beautiful creature outside and I'm immediately fallen in love and I'm pained to the heart. This woman is so beautiful, I don't know if she's human or goddess. He then compares her to Venus and asks if maybe this human that he sees is actually Venus reincarnated. At that word, Arcite espied where the lady wandered to and fro. And at the sight her beauty touched him so that if Palamon was sorely wounded, Arcite was hurt as much or more. With a sigh he said pitiably, the fresh beauty of her who wanders in that place yonder works sudden death upon me, unless I have mercy and favor from her, so that I may at least see her. I am but dead. There is no more to say. So following our bad fortune of Palamon and Arcite, who are imprisoned, the good fortune that follows is that they both fall in love. Love is good, okay? The problem is that they kind of both fall in love with the same person. But it is love nonetheless. So that is good fortune. Arcite, after hearing Palamon, looks out the window, sees Emily as well, and says, oh, if Palamon, you've been wounded, I am wounded more because I am just as much in love with Emily as you are. That's how instantaneous it is. That is one of the aspects of courtly love. All right, so we're picking up line 265 on page 87. Palamon, hearing these words, gave an angry look and answered, do you say this in earnest or as a joke? No, said Arcite, in earnest, on my honor. God help me, I have little desire to joke. Palamon is really mad because Arcite has now fallen in love with his woman. Palamon knitted his brows. It would not, he said, be any great honor for you to be false or to be a traitor to me, who am your cousin and your sworn brother, bound most solemnly by oath, as each of us is to the other, to the pact that never, even under pain or of torture to death, and never until death shall part us two, shall either of us hinder the other in love, or in any other case, my dear brother. Rather that you should faithfully help me in every situation, that I should help you, This was your oath, and mine too, in certainty. I know quite well that you dare not deny this. So Palamon is really mad at Arcite because he said, you're supposed to be my brother, my cousin. You're supposed to help me in all of my endeavors, including love. You can't fight against me. You can't be my enemy in love. And Palamon is saying that Arcite is actually acting like a traitor because he fell in love with Emily as well. Thus, without a doubt, you belong to my side, and now you would treacherously plan to love my lady, whom I love and serve, and ever shall do, until my heart perishes? Now, false Arcite, indeed you shall not do so. I loved her first, and told my sorrow to you, as to my counselor and my brother, sworn to aid me, as I said before. For which cause you are bound as a knight to help me, if it lies in your power. Otherwise you are false. I dare you to say it. Okay, so literally this has happened in a matter of 3 or 4 minutes. Palamon sees Emily, falls in love with her. Arcite sees Emily, falls in love with her. Palamon says, Arcite, you're a traitor. You're not supposed to love her. This is my woman. My woman, she doesn't even know. These two guys are kind of above her in a prison fighting over her. Okay, so the good fortune of them falling in love is immediately followed by the bad fortune that now they are enemies because they both share love for Emily. So 7, bad fortune. Make sure you have those notes down. So line 294 on page 89. Arcite replied in all his pride, you will be false sooner than I, and you are false. I tell you straight out, for before you, I loved her first as a woman. What can you say? Even now you don't know whether she is a woman or a goddess. What Arcite is trying to say is that Palamon worshipped her as a goddess. Arcite said, I fell in love with her as a woman. So technically, I loved her first. You'll have to make that decision. You love a holy deity. I love a created human being. For which reason I told you what had happened to me. I told it to you as my cousin and my sworn brother. Even if I suppose that you loved her first, don't you know the old proverb of learned men, all's fair in love? On my head I swear, love is a greater law than any other that may be given to any earthly man. Therefore, man-made law and decrees like that are broken every day for love among all classes of men. What Arcite is saying is that he loves her as a woman, and he is capable of doing that because of who he is as a man. He also says that laws or man-made laws are broken all the time for love. So Palamon can't really hold that against him. A man must needs love in spite of himself. He may not flee love, even if he dies for not doing it, whether his object is maid or widow or wife. Besides, it is not likely that at any time in your life you will be in her grace, and no more shall I. For well you know yourself now, in fact, that you and I are condemned to prison forever, and no ransom will recover us. We lie like dogs fighting for the bone. They fought all day and yet had no part of it. While they were raging, a kite bird came and bore off the bone from between the two of them. Therefore, at the knight's court, my brother, it is every man for himself. There's no other way. So what Arcite is saying is that, okay, we're both like obsessing about this woman who can't see us, has no idea that we love her. She is physically out of our reach, and because we are imprisoned for the rest of our life, neither one of us will ever get her. And then he makes a comparison. We're like two dogs fighting over a bone, but then a bird will come in and swoop the bone away, and then we'll both be miserable anyway. Love if you like, for I love her and ever shall. And truthfully, dear brother, that's all. We must endure this prison here, and each of us must take his chance. Okay, so we're going to stop the part 1, video 2 here. Make sure you have the notes through number 7 of the good and bad fortune notes.